welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Erica with Memory Box Candle Co. and I make videos all about the journey of starting a candle business. And first and foremost, I do want to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, which is Online Labels. And I will talk more about them later on in this video. But today's video, we are going to be talking all about the cost of starting a candle business. Now, of course, I feel like this kind of goes without saying, but I have to say it. This is going to vary person to person. There's going to be so many different factors that come into play based on where you live, how many different waxes you want to test out before you launch, how many different fragrances that you want to test out before you launch, how close in proximity you are to candle suppliers. That will affect how much you pay for in shipping, or if maybe you want to do a luxury candle line, that's going to cost a lot more. So again, this is just going to vary person to person, and I just kind of had to throw that out there. But essentially, this video is just going to break down the cost of starting a candle business from the very beginning. So if you are somebody who is wanting to get into the craft of candle making and you know that you're going to want to eventually turn it into a candle business, then this is kind of sharing with you kind of from the very beginning. So what we need to look at when it comes to starting a candle business is the cost of testing materials. This is going to be a completely separate cost from the actual starting a candle business. So I wanted to walk you through kind of the two separate parts of starting a candle business for anybody that is just getting started with candle making and they need to get familiar with the testing process, test different supplies, and really choose that prior to actually starting the business. Now, something to keep in mind is if you know you want to work with a specific kind of wax, that can cut down on the amount of different waxes that you want to order and test with. So for instance, if you know that you want to work with coconut wax, you can order maybe 3 or 4 different kinds of coconut waxes. So you're not trying out coconut, soy, paraffin, beeswax, and all different variations within those categories. That will kind of narrow it down. But if you are one of those people who are like, I don't even know at all what I would want to work with, then you do have to take that into consideration, that will cost you more to purchase samples of all of those different kinds of waxes to test with. So what I did was I did a bunch of research. I'm trying to include shipping costs within these prices. I'm giving kind of a general overview of what maybe I would do if I was getting started with a candle business and the kinds of materials that I would test with. So again, this is going to vary, but this is pretty much what I came up with. So the cost for testing out 4 different waxes, let's say again, coconut wax, you're testing out 4 different waxes and you get 10 pounds of each wax. I put $250 for that cost, including the shipping price. And then I also put a 12-pack of 9-ounce straight-sided jars. So from Amazon, you can get that for $21, and you are able to reuse some of those jars for more testing. So you can use all of those 12 jars just for testing, and then you'd be able to reuse some of those. And you may want to purchase more if you want to do more testing at the same time, but I just put down $21 just for those jars. And then I also put 2 16-ounce bottles of 1 fragrance oil scent. So I've always been a fan of keeping all the variables the same during the testing process. And so I recommend to just get 1 fragrance. I personally use mango and coconut milk from Candle Science. That's always been my testing fragrance oil. And I also really love that scent, so that helps as well. So I put 2 16-ounce bottles of 1 fragrance oil. I put that as being $60. And then I also put different series wicks in different sizes, about $100. So of course, this is going to vary based on how many different series of wicks you're going to want to test. This might be more, this might be less, depending on how many wicks. If you get sampler packs, how much that shipping cost is going to be, but I put about $100 for that cost. You are also going to need a scale. So I recommend a scale that can do 0.1 grams. If you do everything in ounces, that's fine. But if you have it to be a little bit more precise, that will allow you to measure both wax and fragrance oil on there and just kind of give you more of an accurate reading. So I put about $15 for the scale. You will also need an aluminum pouring pitcher. Now, this is all very basic of candle making using the double boiler method. So I didn't include a pot in here for the double boiler because I feel like most people will have an old cooking pot that they can use for candle making. If not, you can probably get one for a few dollars at like Goodwill or something like that, so it's not going to add too much into the cost. But for the pouring pitcher, I put around $10 for that. You will also need a thermometer because candle making, the temperature is going to make a huge impact on candle making. It's a huge part of the process. You do need an accurate thermometer. In this case, it's just a regular probed thermometer, nothing fancy like the laser one that a lot of people use or anything, just very basic. And that one I put $15. You will also need little cups to measure out your fragrance oil. So whether or not you're going to be using disposable cups that have like that liner in it so that the fragrance oil doesn't seep out, or if you do something like I do, which is the silicone measuring cups, I put about $10 for that cost. You will also need something to stir the fragrance oil in the pouring pitcher with the wax with, and I use wooden skewers, and those are really cheap, $5 for a big pack of them. You will also need Wick stickers or any kind of heat-resistant glue of any kind. I personally am just very familiar with Wick stickers, so I put about $10 for that. And then also a heat gun. So you will need to get a heat gun for many different reasons. If you need to smooth out the tops of your candles, if there's anything that gets in it and you need to smooth out the top, or if there's sinkholes. It also helps me to melt out the pouring pitcher so that I can clear out some of the leftover wax in there before I make new candles. So that helps a lot as well. So I put about $20 just for a basic heat gun. And then when it comes to labels for your candle jars, now labeling is something I've always been a huge fan of. It's my favorite part of the process when it comes to my candle business. But this is something that is going to make you and your brand and business stand out from everybody else. So when there are so many people using that same exact jar, so for instance, the 9-ounce straight-sided jars, those are used by tons and tons of different candle brands. But the thing that makes them stand out from the rest is what the label looks like. So I've gotten all of my labels from online labels since the very beginning of starting my candle business. You can look back on my very first labeling video, and I talk about online labels in that video and how I go about designing and which labels I choose. And the reason why I like them so much is just because they have so many different options. So if you are looking for a specific size label, you're more than likely probably going to find it on there, and you can order blank sheets to your house and then be able to print it out at home. So you don't have to wait and get it printed. You can get labels printed by them, but I recommend to just print it at home, use your printer, and be able to save money that way because that really can cut down on the cost. And what's really nice about their labels too is that you don't have to buy a certain amount. So like a lot of different companies, you have to buy like 50 or 100 of that one label. And on online labels, you just have to buy one sheet. So there have been many times where I've just kind of been like, oh, let me try out just this one size and see if this works. And you just buy one sheet. And of course, the cost is going to be a little bit more per label. But once you find out which label size you want to do, you can order a bunch of them. And then it takes down the cost of goods to like a few cents or something. And then the very last thing that I put in this testing category is the cost for the extra fragrance oils and samples that you want to try out to pick the fragrances that you want to use for your candle business. Because there is no way that I'm gonna make this list and not include that. So I allocated $200 to that, and honestly it could be more because we all know that we go fragrance oil crazy. We get so happy when we wanna try out this one and this one and this one and this one and this one, and then you just kind of get super overwhelmed with choices, but that's kind of the fun of all of it sometimes. I put $200 and that may be very conservative for those of you that are also fragrance oil fiends like myself that have so many different ones, but I went ahead and just allocated that amount to there. So when it comes to the testing materials, I added up $716 for this testing candle making supplies portion. Now, once you have chosen your supplies, you know what wax you want to work with, you know the wick, you've done your testing, you've created a safe and happy and good performing candle, and you are ready to take the next step into starting a candle business. What do you do now? So what I decided to do was, again, kind of break this up into different sections because starting a business is not just going and getting all the materials to make the product. There's a lot more than goes into it. So I decided to start off just with the materials. So you could order a 45-pound box of your wax of choice. Now, you will save money on shipping if you can pick it up directly from the candle supplier. However, if you do not have a candle supplier that is within driving distance from you that makes sense to save on shipping, then of course you will have to pay for shipping. So I just put $150 for that 45-pound box. I also included buying 3 boxes of those 9-ounce straight-sided jars. So there's 12 that comes in a case. You buy 3 of those and you end up with 36 jars. Now, one thing that I did want to mention in this video is that I understand when it comes to wanting to get the lowest cost of goods for your item as possible. But one thing that I want you to keep in mind throughout this video when I'm giving these beginning cost for getting started, that does not mean that this is going to be what the cost of goods for your candle is going to be through the lifetime of your candle business. The purpose of this is to get you started to a point where you can start reinvesting that money back into the business and eventually get to the point where you can buy things in higher bulk quantities. But it wouldn't make sense for me to go on and say, okay, so you're gonna buy 500 jars and that's gonna be able to take down your cost of goods. It just doesn't make much sense. So just getting started, if you are wanting to get started in kind of the most basic, simplistic way, I think about it as if you have 36 jars and you have, let's say, 6 different scents, which is typically what I recommend to start out a candle business with, then you can have 6 candles made in each scent. And then of course you would need to get fragrance oil. So I recommend buying the 16-ounce bottles. You'd be able to buy 1 bottle for each scent and you'd buy 6 bottles total for each of those 6 scents. And I allocated about $150 for that. But if you were ordering those fragrance oils from different websites, so if you were not ordering from just like one website, let's say just Candle Science, and you were wanting to order it from, let's say, 3 or 4 different websites, you're gonna have to pay a lot more for shipping. And then you would need to buy more of your wick of choice. So I put just a 100-pack of your wicks as being about $15. And then for wick stickers would again be about $10. Now, the nice thing about the testing materials is you can also think about what do you have left over to be able to actually use to create your finished products that you're gonna sell. So this is completely separate from that. So you may have a lot of that supplies left over that you can then use to actually make for your finished good. You'll also want to look into getting a wick holder. If you are using something like the 9-ounce straight-sided jars, I recommend to just get started with clothespins. So for that, I allocated $12 for that, just because it is the easiest wick holder that you can get started with, and they are very inexpensive. And then, of course, the last part that I have right here is labels from Online Labels. So I allocated about $50 on here, but that could technically be on the higher end depending on how many sheets you want to order. And again, this is really just for getting started with 36 candles. But once you have chosen the label size that you want to use, then you'd be able to order more of those sheets at a time. And you'd also be able to pick the material too. So once you kind of figure out what kind of material you want to use, so in the little drop-down menu on Online Labels, there's like a ton of different materials that you can choose from. I've gone with the weatherproof laser as well as the glossy white laser. I believe those are the 2 that I've worked with the most. And something else to consider when you are labeling your candles and actually choosing the labels and getting them sent to you is to think about all the different labels that you'd need to use for a kind of jar like this. So there are so many different styles of labels that you can use. And of course, this is just an example. I'm not telling you to get started with this jar, use whatever vessel you want to use, but this is just an example. So with this, you'd be able to use maybe a short label, maybe a long wraparound label, but something else to consider as well is to have a warning label at the bottom. So you'd have to measure this area right here and get a circle label. And then also another idea would be to put a label on top right here. So I know we're only getting started with 36 candles, but you'd want to make sure that you have enough sheets of each of those sizes ordered and that you can have on hand. And also maybe order a little bit more just in case you need to reprint things out or there's smudges on some of them, because that happens to me a lot. So just make sure that you order enough, and that's kind of why I allocated about $50 for this category. Next, we are moving right into shipping materials because we can't sell candles online unless we have proper shipping materials. Now, if you were wondering about how shipping works when it comes to selling online or shipping out candles, I do have a shipping 101 video, and I also do have other videos actually showing the process of me packaging up orders in case you want to see how I go about doing it. But what I did was I actually just go on Uline and I order everything pretty much from them, except for packing tape. I don't think that I order packing tape from them. I think I order packing tape on Amazon. But when it comes to boxes, this is going to take a little bit of trial and error because you can get free boxes from USPS.com. You can get flat rate boxes, USPS regional rate boxes. There's a few different kinds of boxes that you can get for free and use when you are shipping out candles. Of course, the shipping is not free itself, just the box is free. But I recommend to have multiple different size boxes because a lot of times orders are a little unpredictable. You never know what people are going to order. So you need to have different size boxes that will hold different quantities of different kinds of items. And again, this is just going to come with experience. But I put about $100 towards boxes, and really you'd only need to probably purchase the quantity of 25 when you're getting started. So maybe 25 of 4 different size boxes. And then because candles are breakable during transit, we have to make sure that we are adding as much protection as possible. And again, I do have a video on how to ship out candles without having them break during transit that I will link above, but I allocated again another $100 towards protection. This is packing peanuts, bubble wrap, crinkle cut, whatever it is that you need to add in there to make sure that the candles don't break. And then I also have $30 allocated towards packing tape, and trust me, you will need lots and lots of packing tape when it comes to shipping out orders. And then I also put on here a printer. Now, of course, this is going to, again, vary based on if you have a printer or if you don't have a printer. I recommend just getting started with an inkjet printer. They are a lot more affordable. And I got started with my business using just a $40 Canon inkjet printer. Now, of course, prices have gone up a lot more since then, and just depending on which one you get, I allocated about $150 towards a decent printer to get you started. So now that we have talked about all of that, I am going to move on to some other miscellaneous candle business or just business related things in general that you need to be thinking of. And one of the things is, how are you going to store your finished items? So you can see behind me, I have all of these bookcases. I don't know what I would do if I didn't have my metal racks to hold all of my materials, if I didn't have these to hold my finished goods. So that's definitely something you have to take into consideration. So maybe you already have something at your house that you can put things on at the moment, especially if you were just getting started with a small amount of product. I'm not saying you have to get a bunch of different bookcases or shelving units, but it may help you to just have a designated area and kind of a storage and organization space. So I did allocate $250 on some kind of metal racks or shelves of any kind to hold all of your materials and finished items. You also need to think about your website. So if you are selling online, you are selling on some kind of website. Now, I did get started on Etsy, so I didn't have a lot of upfront costs when it comes to like a web hosting platform or anything like that. But if you are wanting to start on something like Shopify, it is $30 a month plus any additional kind of transaction fees. And then as well for Etsy. So it's 20 cents a listing, but then there's also a bunch of different fees that get added on once your item actually sells. So definitely look into those. And again, I do have a video, I believe, talking about that. And I'll link it above if I do. I think I do. But that's just something to consider on in the very beginning if you want to get started on your own website or if you wanted to get started on something like Etsy. Also, something to take into consideration. This is something that I don't think a lot of people think about having extra money for, just in your bank when it comes to actually selling your items, is I allocated $100 for shipping label money. And what I mean by that is that even if you are charging shipping on your items, no matter if it's your own website or if it's on Etsy, especially if it's on Etsy, because you do have to wait a certain amount of time to get paid. I believe Shopify, you can adjust it to where you can either get paid right away or the very next day. But either way, even if the customer is paying, let's say $5 for shipping, you're not going to be able to use that exact $5 to then go over to, let's say, Pirate Ship, which is what I use, and pay for that shipping label. So I recommend to actually have a little bit of extra money in your account allocated towards shipping labels, just in case you are on Etsy and you are getting orders in and you're not able to use that shipping money right away, and you have to wait to actually get paid before you see that money in your account. And then the last part that I have on here is for photography props. So I allocated $50 for that. That may or may not be like way too much to allocate towards that, but I actually think I got started with something very simple, like some fake eucalyptus plants and a white poster board, which couldn't have cost me more than $10 or $15. But if you're at Home Goods and you see something really cute, like a really cute prop that you want to have in your main photos, it's like $20, $25, then you kind of have that allocated towards that. But something else to also consider, and I know this is something that not everybody has to have because you can use natural light when you are taking photos, but if you want to get like photography lights, that's also something to take into consideration. So a couple $100 could be allocated towards that. I didn't include that in this video, but that is definitely something to take into account just because I know that you can use natural light and that's free. But when I got started, I used my photography lights. I used my iPhone to take pictures with, which was just an iPhone 6 at the time. And I was able to create my main photo that I used on Etsy for all of my candles. And it worked out totally fine until I was able to make more money and then upgrade to my camera and be able to upgrade from there. But getting started with photography on your phone is just fine. And then the very last portion of this video that I had to include, just because I know it's very important, is when you are starting a business, you are starting a business. So you need to look into all of the legal aspects of starting a business. And so I put in business insurance at $50 a month. This, of course, may or may not be higher or lower. You could just pay the year's premium outright. Whatever it is, you do need to have business insurance. A business license, again, I live in California and I live in Southern California, and I think it varies based on the city that you live in, so you'd have to look into that. Mine, I think, was like $75, I believe, so that's what I put down here. For a seller's permit, I didn't pay anything for that. You may have to pay for yours. So I just put $0 for that just because I'm not too sure about that. And then you also have to think about if you are wanting to form some kind of business entity to protect your business. And at the bare minimum, you'll need to get a DBA, which is a doing business as. So for me personally, I was Erica Boucher, DBA Memory Box Candle Co. Now I'm an S corporation, so it's just Memory Box Candle Co. Incorporated. But if you are selling products under anything else than your legal birth name, then you do have to get a DBA in order to sell candles under that name. I do not know how much it would cost to form or get a DBA done because I think it varies so much. So again, I didn't put a cost in here. And if you were also wanting to form an LLC or an S corporation, that is again going to cost a lot more, and that's going to vary just based on which business attorney you go to or if you do it online or wherever you go. And then just the last little bit of information that I wrote down for you to be thinking about in terms of other costs as well is thinking about paid apps or paid softwares that you may want to use. So apps that you may use that might help you with your business or advertising, marketing, anything like that. Softwares like bookkeeping softwares, like I use QuickBooks. Inventora for inventory is what I use. So these are all separate things that you should be thinking about on what could be a monthly cost for you to run your business. And also if you are wanting to do any kind of local events. So think about vendor fees, think about all of the supplies that you'll need to do those vendor events. So these are just some extra things that I didn't include in the total, but just something for you to be thinking about. So the total cost of that first section I said was $716, and then that whole other section that I listed was $1,425. So in total for this example was $2,141. But honestly, I'd recommend probably to have anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000 to invest and get started with your candle business. However, getting started, I would say probably bare minimum would be $1,500 to $2,000, just really depending on, again, that testing supplies, how much you can use of that testing supplies that's left over to then use for your actual finished goods. And then once you start selling your candles, then you can take that money and start reinvesting it back into your business. And again, lowering that cost of goods should definitely be a goal, and purchasing things in bulk to be able to do that, again, is definitely a goal. And then you'll just kind of get the hang of things and start adding more things on and start learning a lot more. It is such a learning process, and there's so much that you won't know until you do it. And even then, you're still going to be learning. There's still so much that happens and so much that goes on with me and my business, especially since it's incorporated, and there's just a lot more that goes into it. But with that, I think I'm going to end today's video right here. I really hope you guys enjoyed today's video and got some helpful information. I really tried to give as much information and try to think of everything that I possibly could. But if there is anything that I missed, please let me know in the comment section below. And again, a huge thank you to Online Labels for sponsoring today's video. I really, really appreciate you, and make sure that you guys go check them out. I actually have a link that I will pin in the comment section below, as well as in the description, for $5 off of your first purchase from Online Labels. So make sure you take advantage of that. But with that, I will see you all in the next video. If you enjoyed it, leave it a thumbs up, as well as subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, don't forget to follow me over on Instagram at Erica Marie Morris, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys. I feel like if I don't have that flow of ending the video, then I just don't know how to end it, so I kind of will repeat myself.